This episode of Planted is brought to you by Pax Labs.
The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planted with Sarah Pine. We're recording live here at Cannabis Europa in London. I'm Sarah Pine, host of Planted, VP of PR and Communications at Pulse Signal Agency. I'm also the vice chair of the California Cannabis Advisory Committee, and I've spent years in reform, education, and in the intersection of consumer behavior. One thing I love about Cannabis Europa is the conversations here tend to go deeper than just markets and investment headlines, because ultimately cannabis policy is about people, it's about public health, it's about criminal justice, and it's about culture. And it's also about how societies decide to regulate something millions of people already use. Today's guest has spent years helping shape and advocate for cannabis policy conversations in Europe, especially around the Dutch coffee shop model and broader reform efforts. Please welcome Simone van Breda. Simone, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to start with the Netherlands because I think that a lot of people, especially outside Europe, believe they understand the Dutch cannabis system. And then they actually start talking to people involved in it and realize that it's far more complicated than the stereotype. What do people still misunderstand about the Dutch model?
Well, first of all, it's the fact that it's legal. Or actually, it's not legal. So that's the fact they don't understand. And the other thing is that a lot of people don't know is that we have not any regulation around the products.
I think a lot of people would really be surprised about that because everybody I know when they talk about going to the Netherlands, they're like, oh, it's legal there. It's already there. And I was like,
Almost.
The Netherlands has long been viewed globally as progressive on cannabis, but internally the Dutch system has always had contradictions built into it. How would you describe the reality today?
Tolerated. No, actually, we're working for over 50 years with a tolerance policy. And this is basically because the Dutch government understood in the heroin epidemic that it was better to let people consume a soft drug than a hard drug. That's how we started the separation of markets. And this is actually how the entry to a safe product, a safe environment to have to buy a safe product started. But do you have any idea to why our backdoor is not regulated? Do you have an idea?
I would love to hear.
Because I also didn't know. Because in the Netherlands, we have a regulated front door. But we, as you know, we're turning water into wine. We cannot buy the cannabis. We call it the back door. But actually, in the 70s, we were talking about hash cafes. And hash is not produced in the Netherlands.
Right.
So they knew it was coming from abroad, so they could not regulate it. That's actually how we got stuck with a hidden production.
So hidden production due to pragmatic harm reduction.
Yes. You could say it like that.
How would you... I have so many questions for you. One thing that's especially interesting right now is a closed coffee shop supply chain experiment. Can you explain what it's trying to accomplish?
Actually, like I said, we have our tolerance policy for over 50 years. And there were a lot of voices going up like the time passed. This doesn't fit anymore in our current time. So we need to change it. But even how pragmatic they were back in the 70s, we are still very conservative. So basically, we're doing a research now if it's possible to have a closed chain from legal production to sale.
I know that there's been some changes around wanting access for people who are visiting. I often have the conversations with people about when you are a tourist and you're a cannabis tourist, how can you be a good tourist so that you don't ruin it for everybody else? Do you feel like there are some things that could be done as visitors when they visit Amsterdam that could actually help rather than hinder the situation with access?
Well, to be really honest, you're speaking about the ecotourism, the tourist ban, and this discussion is raised every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's in our law since 2010 already, but it's up to the municipalities if they would like to obey to it. And it was actually meant for drug tourism, like people who would just visit the city, buy the product, and leave. But if we look at Amsterdam, people are coming for Amsterdam and they do also visit the coffee shop. They do not only come for the coffee shop. And actually the discussion in Amsterdam is about mass tourism. So there's so many tourists coming, but not only Amsterdam is facing this problem. And then we're talking about, they're talking about like how the tourists behave and that it's a mess and it's too busy. But what would be my advice to be a good tourist? That's don't go to the city. That would be weird, right?
Right.
So, and I think that's how you behave. Like have your norms and your values, and don't be on the street. But
Yeah.
actually, I don't think that are the cannabis consumers or the people who just visit the coffee shops that would stigmatize them. So
Maybe having the conversation a little goes a long way.
yeah.
Do you think that countries sometimes romanticize the Dutch system without fully understanding the operational and political realities?
Yes, definitely. We see it a lot. Like, and how can they? Like, if you're not in the system, and I think maybe a lot of people in the Netherlands don't even totally understand the system.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same. Like, if I hear stories about Germany or Switzerland, for example, they're not always accurate.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's like even in the States, people will ask me, so it's legal everywhere in the United States. Well, no. And we still have areas where you can't even have CBD in certain states because we behave like kind of like little mini countries. Even our cultures are very different.
Yes.
Europe feels like it's in a very transitional period right now. Germany's moving, the Czech Republic is moving, other countries are watching closely. What momentum do you see across Europe right now?
I don't know where it's going, to be really honest. I've been attending the UN, the CND 69, and for the first time, there was not a consensus about what harm reduction means. And for us, harm reduction have also always been about, limiting the harms, make sure that you have a safe product and everything. But suddenly, some countries were saying harm reduction is make sure that they do not consume. So, like, if you would ask me in what direction are we going, I don't know.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it because to not consume, it's almost like we have these conversations in the United States about sex education in children, and it's like, well, we want to keep them safe, so we just won't talk about it at all. And how can you keep someone safe if they don't know?
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Like, that's how it started. It was built on harm reduction, but if harm reduction suddenly means something else, that's I find it very difficult. And we see it not only in the UN, but we also see it in our parliaments. Like I know, of course, you haven't been following our Dutch drug debates, but there are some people in the parliament who are saying we're normalizing drug use with our Dutch cannabis experiments. And I think that's a sad development.
I think it is too, because normalization gives people a choice where they're not influenced by stigma. Like and I keep going back to the United States, but in the United States, the one thing that we found is that when we get into legalization, it actually, some people are more curious to experiment for wellness or to relax, but they don't go overboard. And we found that youth access actually goes down because one, they don't have the underground access that they did before. And two, if your uncle's using it, it's just not so exciting. I think that part of the excitement is really the stigma.
Actually, I'm laughing because last week I attended a congress about harm reduction.
Uh-huh.
And they were speaking about, it was not only about cannabis, it was about tobacco, it was about alcohol. And there they were speaking about like we have been normalizing alcohol so much that they will start drinking much sooner. And actually what you're telling me now is the opposite approach. So that's interesting to look at it a little bit more deep, like what's now actually happening.
Well, and I think that, you'll always have, depending on, because as we look at like cannabis and how it affects our bodies, it's, I always say we're walking chemistry experiments. We're all so different, but you're always going to have that realistic conversation about your relationship with the substance, no matter what it is.
Yeah. I have children, 3, and my oldest is 19. I have also one from 15 and a daughter from 12. And I'm working in this industry since 2017. And I was a little bit afraid when my children are growing up that I have been normalizing cannabis too much because this is my job. And I thought, okay, they're going to high school. Now I'm afraid that maybe they will start smoking because it's so normalized in my household. And the fun thing is, it worked the opposite because they're well informed.
Yeah, I believe that information is really empowering for people to make educated, empowered decisions. Yeah, I know for myself, I was a very precocious child. So if I was told I wasn't supposed to do something and the information was being held from me, I was like, well, I need to know. I need to do some experimenting. But if I have the information in front of me and I can make an educated decision, it's lost a lot of its mystery. And especially when you're at an age where when you're younger, you're constantly looking for excitement. I mean, it changes everything.
Yes, definitely.
You've spent years working in advocacy and policy conversations. Do you think policymakers are becoming more educated about cannabis, or do you feel like you're still fighting a lot of the same stigma and misinformation?
Yeah, I think there is a difference. Like we have policy workers here who know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly how it is to work with the coffee shops, to work with a regulated market and a half-regulated market. But if we look at the parliament, you have people who are there for hopefully 4 years, like the Netherlands is not always 4 years, but you hope they are informed and we're trying to inform them, but sometimes it doesn't matter how many times you inform them. Politics is about opinions, and that's difficult.
Yeah, it is. So I bring this up often. Our mutual friend, Bo Whitney, I've talked to him about policy, and, he comes with all of his data, and I ask him, are they listening to the data, policymakers? And we always have the conversation about how emotional policy is rather than being based on fact. I wonder, how do you have those conversations? Is it a combination of data and opening hearts and minds, or does it depend the room that you're in?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. That's what I said. Like we're working for 50 years with the coffee shop. So some policy workers are well informed and they do know what they're doing. They also see the need for coffee shops and they do know why they are important. They do know what it can bring to the city to have a regulated, safe place for people to consume.
Yeah.
But even though we have these successful stories in the Netherlands, and we even did a whole experiment to prove it again, what we knew already. But I really hope that this will convince those people from the parliament who are actually taking this decision. And that's something that worries me, that this is not always the case.
Yeah. I feel like it's a greater mirror to what we see, how policy is made throughout. It really kind of shines a light on policy in general, that, we grow up believing in our politicians, advocating for policies, thinking that they're making these decisions based on talking to experts. But when we are in the midst of policy with this, we wonder, where does that also bleed out into in other areas, and how do we fix that?
Yes. And the will to fix it.
Yeah.
And if we do not agree on how it's fixed, then it gets very difficult.
It does. It does. How do you see a stigma evolving in Europe right now?
Well, we just answered that a little bit, like what happened at the UN convention.
Yeah.
I see that also in the Netherlands, like the more conservative parties are racing, and then they're growing. And sadly, I'm not so positive about how it's evolving.
Yeah, I was really surprised the other year in Barcelona for Spannabis, and finding that there were recreational shops, clubs that we went to, and then we had to be very careful about having cannabis on us when we were walking around. And then there was no access to medicinal, although I believe that they're trying to work on that. But I was also told that part of that was the politics, the parties that were in power in Barcelona at the moment were making it more difficult. So it seems like the shift often has to do with who's in power and what their thoughts are as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like if we're talking about recreational cannabis, like the social clubs and the coffee shops, we're speaking somehow about freedom of choice. Like if you want to drink beer or a cocktail or smoke cannabis or take an edible, it's freedom of choice, like how I like my enjoyment. But if we're talking about a medicine, I think everybody should have the right to get the most best possible care. And if that's with cannabis, it's with cannabis. And for some reason, we don't allow people to take the decision what they like to consume. And for some reason, we also like to decide what's the best care for somebody, even though it's possibly not.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where the conversations come in too. When people have successful outcomes, I know for myself, I always enjoyed cannabis, but I didn't understand the medicinal applications until I had cancer in my 30s. And I used it successfully to help me through that. And that was the conversation that I had when I started working in cannabis, and friends and old colleagues were like, has she lost her mind? Oh no, she just survived cancer. It's okay. And I was like, no.
Sorry to hear and happy to see you here.
Thank you. But it's, it seems like when you have a story about that where it's very serious and you get the relief, then maybe somebody listens. Still smoking joints? Okay, we need to talk. If you love cannabis but you're still lighting it, let's look at what's actually happening. When you burn flower, you're creating smoke, and that smoke contains harmful compounds like tar, soot, benzene, and formaldehyde. In fact, almost 200 different compounds have been detected in joint smoke. So how do we know this? PAX decided to study it. In controlled lab testing, they compared joint smoke to vapor from their devices, using the same flower under the same conditions, and measured 16 key harmful compounds. The result is pretty striking. Vaporization reduced those compounds by more than 95%, because when you heat cannabis instead of burning it, you change what you inhale. You still get cannabinoids and flavor, just without all the extra stuff that comes from smoke. This isn't about judgment, it's about information. If you want to learn more, go to pax.com/science. Pax is setting higher standards so you can smoke less smoke. And for Planted listeners, get 20% off at pax.com with code PLANTED20.
I hope. Look, like I said, I work multiple years in the cannabis industry, and I lost my mother on a brain tumor. And my mom was so supportive about my job and what I was doing, and she was really cheering for me. And then she got this tumor, and we did know about what it could do for you and during your chemo, and so I organized it for her, because then I also understood that it's not so easy to get it from the doctor, so you're not getting it prescribed. But even though it was from a trusted source and with the right information, she was afraid.
Yeah.
She was so afraid. And she said, no. And when I tried to ask her about, because she was maybe also a little bit hesitating to tell me that she was afraid, She said, but I also don't want nobody to know that we have this. And I was even more shocked, like, huh? But is this the same? Like the one who's proud at me and cheering for me? Is she now telling me that we cannot say that we have it in the house? And after a couple months, like after 50 radiations and 6 months of chemo, the 3 tumors came back. Like the whole medical treatment didn't work at all. And she was afraid, and that was her last resolution. She tried the cannabis oil. And it was too late, obviously, just a couple of weeks after she passed away. But the nice thing is that she started sleeping, she started eating, and I was laughing a little bit with her because she was also getting a little bit funny. But I did see her quality of life improve. And I wished for her that, because from her diagnosis until she passed away was only 10 months. And I wish that she would have been not so afraid to try it sooner.
Yeah, I mean, that stigma is so incredibly powerful. And the one thing that I've learned is that people who are really influenced by it, when they do see the benefits, the medicinal benefits, sometimes there can be some anger and grieving about the fact that the stigma kept them away from something that could help for so long.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to go back to the coffee shops a little bit. What role do they play culturally in the Netherlands beyond simply retail?
Yeah, that's funny because if you think about it, does this shape our culture? Inside, no. From people from the outside who think that the coffee shop's our culture, yes. But actually, I didn't think it shaped our culture, if it's part of our culture. I think I know more people from abroad who are smoking cannabis than people from inside the country.
Yeah. I don't think many people realize that.
I know.
What do you find are some of the things that you need to educate people on the most?
For who?
People who are looking from the outside, looking into the Netherlands and wanting to know what you're doing.
Well, first of all, it's not legal. And coffee shops aren't healthcare. They're retail shops. They're a place for enjoyment. That's an important thing. And if I would speak to somebody who would like to enter the market, like if you're working on the medical market or recreational, is be aware of what you're doing and who you are serving. And if we want to break through stigma, also function as you should and take your responsibility on that.
Yeah. When you look ahead 5 or 10 years, what does successful cannabis regulation look like in Europe?
You want my honest opinion or my happy opinion?
I want you to look into your crystal ball and give me your honest opinion.
I hope everything is still open, if I'm really honest. Like we have now this Dutch experiment, and the evaluation will be in 2028. Mm-hmm. And I really hope that, look, the experiment is a success. Everybody inside the experiment is happy. But this rate of success doesn't mean that we will legalize. And that is what worries me. And besides that, we have no idea what's going to happen in Europe or what way the ball starts rolling. Are we going to social clubs? Are we only rolling towards a medical system? Or are we not making any steps at all? So, yeah, it's. I'm worried about what's going to happen, especially like what's the like how they were speaking in the UN. And how they're speaking in our parliaments, and like what we're seeing happening in Germany. I think it's good that there is access, but where is the care for the patients? Like, I think if you are consuming recreational, you should be in the recreational system. If you're a patient, you should be in the medical system with budgets and oversight and help.
Mm-hmm. And products, modes of use that will actually be effective for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. What countries do you have your eye on right now? Who are you watching?
Our own.
What are ones that you're curious to see if they have models that may actually push us forward rather than being in a standstill, or are there any?
Well, to be really honest, like we have this tolerance policy for 50 years. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're talking about the Netherlands like we're inventing it, but we do know in 50 years what we're doing. We do know what's working. We do know what consumer information or what you need to do if somebody's not getting, if somebody's getting sick or trying for the first time. We do know what we're doing. And I think this should be a little bit more focal. I think people should have a little bit a better understanding that we're not inventing this market. I think that's very important, and I really hope that other countries would start seeing that.
Do you think, with all the years that cannabis has been here, and you have seen a lot, and then you get to see what North America has been doing, and hopefully learning from our mistakes, because I do see a lot of reinventing the wheel throughout the world, but we especially saw that in North America. Do you think that Europe has an opportunity to build a better cannabis system than North America?
I have no idea. And I think that also totally depends on the culture. Like what works in the Netherlands would maybe not even work in Germany or in North America. Like for us, the coffee shop system works because we were having it as a solution for public order in favor of public health. We were separating the markets and this was our objective. So it worked, and it worked for that. But if you have a totally objective in another country with a different culture, I don't think we can do copy-paste and it will work everywhere.
I think you're so right. I mean, even like I mentioned before, even the United States, state by state, the policies differ because of how different our cultures are. I actually didn't learn that. I really didn't feel that until I started going from state to state doing policy and really understanding it. It actually gave me a better understanding of my own country, which was very interesting, you know? What concerns you most about the next phase of legalization and commercialization?
That people in the industry are not taking their responsibility on their purpose. That concerns me. That we keep mixing up markets, which I think we should not. And that there will be a model where nobody's happy with. That's actually, and then what I mean with where nobody's happy with is that a model what's not working, not for the Netherlands, not for Germany, not for Spain or wherever, because it doesn't match the culture and the values.
Yeah, it really does have to dovetail. You can't be going just through the eyes of capitalism, because we know that doesn't work, because it doesn't serve the people. You're not going, and from their side, it doesn't get them the engagement that they need. Now, I normally ask this question towards the beginning of an interview, but what drew you to cannabis advocacy and policy work?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm a strategist, and actually, I just got into the business. It's not such a interesting story, but what kept me here is actually I saw how weird it is functioning. And I grew up in the Netherlands. I grew up in Amsterdam, and I did not even know that we were working with a tolerance policy. I thought that everything was well organized, but then I understood you cannot get the best medical care as you want. Like, I thought those things were organized, and it's not. And I think that's what definitely kept me in the industry.
Yeah. Do you feel like, as I know for myself, as I get older, the more I start learning and the more I just can't sit back and I have to get involved. Do you feel like you have more fire than you did when you began?
Yes, definitely. Like earlier, I was talking with somebody, and I'm my work mostly focused recreational, but because of the conferences, I also learn about the medical markets, and it's raising questions like, hey, but why is it not perceived always like a medicine, or why are they not doing this, or why are they not doing that? So yes, definitely, that fire is growing, but it also tells me that I need to stay focused.
Yeah. I have so many more questions for you, but since we're going to be wrapping up, I have a final one.
Yeah.
So what does a truly successful relationship between society and cannabis look like to you?
A market that is working, that is matching the expectations of the consumer or the patients. Like, because that's actually what's happening now. Like, we're losing patients to an illegal system because they're not getting served in the right way, not getting helped in the right way. And the same with consumers. Like in the Netherlands, we are the coffee shops are a solution for public order. They're competing with the illegal markets. But if we can no longer compete with the illegal markets, we're losing our existence right.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. And I think we have to have more conversations about that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Simone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been a really thoughtful conversation. This is Planted with Sarah Payan. I'm Sarah Payan. Remember, conversations normalization. These episodes will be available online, so you can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and have a wonderful rest of your conference. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Planted listeners. This is Jackie Bryant speaking. I'm a longtime cannabis journalist, writer, and editor, and these days I work for Humboldt Family Farms getting out the message. I'll be spending time with you here on Planted to talk about who we are. If you're listening, you're exactly the kind of person we want to know. We're a collective of legacy farmers in Humboldt County. Some of these families have been growing on the same land since the 1970s, long before Prop 215 or anything else. They grew it for family, friends, and patients because they believed in this plant when believing in it was risky. That's still who Humboldt Family Farms is. Sun-grown, living soil, legacy genetics, terp profiles that run double the industry standards. That's what happens when you let farmers take the reins. This year, we're at California State Fair, Surfer Magazine. Powder Magazine built a collab around our flower. We hold a medical license at a pivotal moment for federal rescheduling when you think about new markets, exports, whatever comes next. We're distributed across California through Nabis. Find us at Embark, Purple Lotus, California Street Cannabis, and on Flower Co. And if you're someone who wants to be part of what we're building, a buyer, a retail partner, or just someone who wants to smoke the best sun-grown cannabis in California, find us at HumboldtFamilyFarms.com. We want to do business with you.
Hello, and everybody, and welcome to Planted with Sarah Payan. We're recording live at Cannabis Europa in London. I'm Sarah Payan, the host of Planted. I'm also the VP of PR and Communications at Pulse Signal Agency. I'm a longtime advocate, and I am the chair of the California Advisory Committee, and I am so happy to be here. I've seen the industry evolve through the years. I've been in the industry for almost 2 decades through different regulatory systems, very much different realities. And this year, the mood seems very different. A few years ago, the conversation in cannabis was about growth at all costs. And this year, the conversations feel more grounded in sustainability, infrastructure, operational discipline, and whether companies are actually building something durable enough to survive the next phase of the industry. So I'm excited to dig into all of this today with someone who's been navigating these conversations globally. Please welcome Barry Laxer, CEO of Cielo Verde. Barry, thank you for joining me. So I want to start broad. You've operated through multiple eras of cannabis already. When you look at the industry right now, what feels fundamentally different about this moment?
It's a big question. And there haven't really been eras of cannabis. Cannabis is a real new industry, even though it seems like it's been around for a while. It's only really legalized in Canada since 2018. Was legalized medically prior to that, but it's a very new industry. And for a very new industry, it seems to be evolving really quickly. Like as soon as we think that we've got something nailed, it changes. And it seems like that's the focus of this conference this year is all the changes that have been happening so recently. As you said, there have been a couple of these conferences. This is the third one that I'm at, and it's entirely different than it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's For all the change that we've had, and people kind of talk about their time in cannabis almost in dog years, when we look back at this moment, we're still at a very nascent period of our industry.
Oh yeah, it's a baby industry. It it's interesting to speculate what it'll sort of grow into, but it's certainly changed a whole lot since it started. I don't know where you want to start the conversation because you're right. 2 years ago, the conversations were entirely different. Everything was brand new, and everybody was excited, and the markets were opening, and a lot of people were finding success, and I think they still are. But the focus of it seems to have changed. Not as so much more afraid and so much less optimistic and so much posturing on where we are and where we need to be.
Yeah, wait, I'm feeling that shift too. North America expanded it incredibly fast, and Europe has taken a slower, more compliance-heavy approach. Do you think that Europe ultimately benefits by moving slower?
I think Europe follows the trends. Right now, Germany seems to lead Europe in terms of cannabis. I guess because it's the largest market right now, and it's changed so much just in the last year, 2 years. Germany used to sort of be the country of big cannabis opportunity and growth. Now all the conversations are about price compression and shrinking markets. And well, you're right. Price compression is sort of like the catch-all phrase right now when it comes to anything cannabis.
Yeah, we went from green rush to price compression pretty fast.
Really fast, which, being from Canada, I can say is really following the Canadian model and the Canadian experience.
Yeah.
We went from cannabis wonderland to cannabis deadland in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe there's a lot of the forces and factors that took Canada down into that hole are being exported to Germany.
Do you feel like the European market is learning from North America's mistakes?
I think they're inheriting Canada's mistakes. Canada, which I think is still the only recreational legal market, experienced a tremendous growth in expectation of legalization, raised hundreds of billions of dollars, saw tremendous investment, and it lasted about a year, and then it collapsed. And I think so many of the reasons for that collapse, and for which Canada is still in a cannabis depression, a lot of that is just being exported to Europe and to Germany.
Do you feel like it's an operations issue or a policy issue?
I think it's a much more basic supply and demand issue. I think what happened in Canada was that there were too many licenses given out, too much production. Canada built enough cannabis production for the whole world and forgot that they only had 40 million people. And most of those facilities, the mega facilities, the billion-dollar facilities, they're gone. But funny enough, there's still licenses being given out every day. More and more producers keep coming on board without really realizing that there's nowhere to sell the product to. So a lot of that product now has been finding its way to Europe and to Germany, and they're sort of discovering that there is so much product around that supply and demand, it's pushing prices lower.
Yeah, and that doesn't help create scalable environments for success in business.
No, it's not scalable. It's a problem, and I think that it's a real Canadian problem because we keep on producing more and more cannabis without knowing who we're going to sell to, and more producers keep showing up on the scene, thinking that they're going to, make a cannabis fortune, and finding out that the markets aren't necessarily there, or not the way they thought they were going to be. So they end up being pushed into selling product at whatever price they can get for it, just to stay alive.
Yeah, and it's when you're looking at that, I mean,
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all.
what creates, I believe, sustainable growth in a company isn't just the race to the bottom. There has to be some sort of differentiation, but that's got to be incredibly difficult now.
It's very difficult. I think in Canada, and that sort of permeates to the rest of the world, because we supply so much of the rest of the world, that there is too much product, and certainly the product is getting better. From when I started in 2018 or 2019 to today, it's a whole different world. What we're able to do was unthinkable back then, and even then, no matter how good we think we are and what we're doing, it's just never good enough, and you still can't get paid for it. And it's you have to produce the best product around, but the market takes it for granted. It's very hard to differentiate yourself.
Yeah. Well, and also when you have difficulty with being able to actually educate the public to understand those differences.
That's the big caveat. The problem, the way we see it in Canada, and I think maybe the way it is in Europe too, it's hard to create value. In most other industries, particularly general CPG, you can build a story. You can talk about what differentiates you. You can talk about what goes into it. You can promote it commercially. And we're not allowed to do that in cannabis. It's okay for us to trade in it, and the governments don't ban it, and they tax it, but they put sort of so much weight on how we can promote it and how we can talk about it and how we can talk about ourselves and give our stories. They don't allow us to create value in anything other than price.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's, in many ways, it's said that it's done for the sake of public safety, but a safe public is an educated, informed public. And so when we get into things more like normalization, where like you and I know if we go to a pub together, how much what we can drink and how much we can drink of it. But when you're dealing with the public in cannabis, a lot of people are really uninformed on, the difference between what is a bargain product, what is a high-end product, what they need as far as percentages of THC or other cannabinoids, because those are largely very soft, like underground almost touch points where they have to be sought out.
I think a lot of it on the legislative side really just comes from ignorance and chosen ignorance. I think that cannabis in Europe, it was that way a bit in Canada, but it's almost like it's okay, we have to legalize it, and okay, there's enough evidence that maybe we should legalize it medically, but we don't want to know about it. And we certainly don't want anybody advertising it or talking about it. It's like, it's okay, we're going to let it be sold, but we're not, don't talk about it, don't advertise it, don't say anything about it, don't say anything good about it. That sort of continues to follow the industry. And I think that's the biggest reason why there is so much price compression, because there's no story. We're not allowed to talk about perceived value, about benefits, about getting a message out. It all comes down to price and THC. So there's no choice almost for it to get driven down to the bottom because there's no differentiator. Everybody can grow cannabis. Everybody can have it. Some of it is, stronger than the rest of it, but where does the value come from? We are not allowed to attribute any value except for THC, and so it's naturally going to get driven to the bottom. And until legislation changes a little bit, and we can talk about the products and the producers and how it's done, and why one product may be better than another one, and maybe teach the public about what value there is from product to product, it's just going to continue to get pushed down into the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about infrastructure in 2026, what does that actually mean to you?
That's a good question. Infrastructure on what level?
Whatever comes to mind for you when you think about it, like what's first and foremost in your mind when you think about this? Because I know as a leader of a large company, you're looking at like a very big picture. What are some of the things that are standing out for you?
For me, infrastructure, my company notwithstanding, I guess, is in distribution channels, supply channels, all the different facets in the industry, all the producers, the remediators, the service providers, the marketers, to the extent that we have marketers, government. There's so much layers of legislation and so many industries that have grown up around cannabis, and learning how to navigate them. People that put on conferences, there's so much industry built around it. I don't know if that's really infrastructure, but I don't think there's actually that much infrastructure to the industry. It's an industry that's kind of been legalized, but not really been managed. It has to survive on its own. It's like a hands-off commodity for the governments, and yet we're not allowed to develop it as a regular product. So I think it's lack of infrastructure, to be honest, because there's nothing that supports it. That's why it all comes back to the whole price compression thing that everyone's talking about, because there is no infrastructure. There's nothing that it's really based on. It's pure supply and demand, and who has more of the market share. But there's infrastructure, I think, implies control and thought, and I think it's lacking infrastructure, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about I have a background in organizational psychology, and we talk about organizational change, storming, norming, and reforming. And I used to say that we were in the norming stage, but I think we're still in the tail end of the storming.
Yeah, I think that it's still so new until we're allowed to talk about it, and until we're allowed to look at the value and talk about the value. It's chaotic. I wouldn't say it's storm. I'd say chaotic, because there's no rules. Yeah. Everybody's always trying to, push the envelope and see what they can do, what they can get away with. But there's no structure. So it's a growing industry. There's no one really knows the market.
Yeah.
And everybody's sort of looking for a definition, but nobody's giving it.
No, I mean, when I try to appeal to policymakers through a more normalized lens, like getting them to understand that if you have somebody who's, going to college, who's interested in cannabis, it's actually an opportunity for something like supply chain management to seem sexy for the first time ever. I mean, who knew? But they don't seem to understand the opportunity to create new, engagement in manufacturing and business through this, that it's actually just another lens.
That's a big statement. Supply chain certainly is becoming the dominant industry in cannabis, uh, controlling the product from wherever it gets produced to wherever it ultimately gets marketed, and and who controls the that chain are really the dominant people in the industry, because again, without marketing and without advertising, the customers are, in a sense, I'm about to say a victim, but certainly a target, because they don't know. Their availability of information is really limited, and while legislation doesn't want published information or advertising or marketing, that's really the only way that patients and consumers can make good choices about what they want. So they're really dependent on the people in the supply chain to give them the information of the products that they're selling and moving, and those are all the people that have vested interests in selling the product. So they shouldn't necessarily be the information providers, but that industry of marketing and advertising and promotion isn't allowed to be. So the people in the supply chain are really controlling the business.
Yeah. Well, and then another differentiator, one that we can have, but isn't something that we can kind of crow from the rooftops, is about consistency. I hear more and more conversations about consistency, and that sounds basic, but cannabis hasn't historically been very good at consistency.
It's a good point. And it ties back into your comments about supply chain. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, because the people that control the supply chain control where the product comes from, but are also the people that are selling it at the other end, they can afford to be inconsistent. In other words, because there tend to be layers of product movement between where it's produced and where it ultimately ends up. If it can't always come from the place where it's originally sourced, it can come from some other place. It can still get the same product name, printed on the envelope, and the ultimate consumer may find that what they thought was something they liked and relied on 6 months ago isn't what's being offered to them today, even though it's packaged the same and called the same.
Yeah, and it's incredibly emotional for people. I don't think that people who aren't involved in cannabis understand that. As somebody who is a leader in retail for many years, like seeing the emotional responses to people when either the favorite product that helped them with something isn't available or it changed, it's you hear about it on the retail side.
Well, imagine if you took aspirin for your headache and it worked all the time, but you don't really know where the aspirin was made, and then all of a sudden what you thought you were getting, because it was great and it did exactly what you want, whoever it is that's selling it, you couldn't get it that month, so they bought it somewhere else and they still called it aspirin.
Yeah, I'd be mad.
Yeah, you'd be mad. And I think because there's so little control, I think that happens a lot. And I think it's also comes back into the price compression and the market supply and who controls it, because there's not that much regulation. Maybe there's regulation, but there's not that much enforcement about that kind of thing happening. And I think also as a producer, there's only so much product that we can supply, and we try and always do what we say that we're selling and call it what we call it. We don't control it at the other end, because we don't distribute directly to the market. And maybe that's where it has to go to, where producers as we do in Canada. But and by the way, it's not an issue in Canada. In Canada, if you buy whatever product you buy, in general, from any of the government licensed stores, from licensed producers, you will get consistent product because it's much more difficult to mask where it's coming from. But in the trade over to Europe, where it is controlled, where there is a supply chain and there's intermediaries, it's easy for products to get substituted.
Yeah. That breaks down the consumer trust. There's also this tension right now between scaling quickly and scaling responsibly. What tends to break first when companies move too fast?
Quality is always the first thing to go. Quality and supply. You see the market. You want to supply as much of it as you can, and generally it's just because there's not enough product to fill the demand, and so you try and grow more. You try and package more. And if you can't do it in your own facility, so you go and buy it from another facility, it's very tough because there's costs, and businesses need to operate, and when you see opportunities, you want to capitalize on them. And I think sometimes companies' desire to capitalize overshadows their integrity about the product and keeping it true to what it was supposed to be.
Well, yeah, and it's, building a reputation takes so much time, and it only takes one moment like that to break it.
Yes. And in the end, it's all about quality and reliability. You're only as good as your last bad sale. Nothing coming from, I've been in the industry a long time, and nothing can substitute quality product, reliability, delivering the same thing all the time when you're supposed to. Nothing can overshadow that. Ultimately, the minute you start going down that path, it's just a question of time until something goes wrong and you're out of business.
Yeah. Well, and if you do maintain that quality, that is a big differentiator, but it does take a long time for consumers to catch on to that.
Yes, but what happens is ultimately consumers do start to rely on products that are consistent, and it's still such a new market that I don't think anything has been around all that much to command that much consumer loyalty. And certainly without advertising and without marketing and with branding to an extent, but even with branding, it has to be consistent. You can have the best brand, but if it's not coming from the same place all the time, the brand might be great, but ultimately it becomes an unreliable one.
Yeah. What mistakes do you see companies still repeating?
What mistakes? Growth too fast. In Canada, the biggest mistakes have been selling at any price, because they create unsustainable industries. And in Canada, cannabis is unsustainable for the most part. Most of the prices in Canada to do good commercial business are below cost. And for so many reasons, companies continue to do it. If you can't do it and do it profitably, don't do it, because otherwise you're going to have to cut a corner at some point. You'll compromise the product, you'll compromise your company, and unless you're a big public company that's in the business of raising capital, you'll end up out of business.
Yeah. Well, and stemming from that, what does operational maturity look like?
Again, it's a big question because I think companies need to really focus on business being business. you have to make a profit. You can't lose money this year and next year and the year after in the hope of being profitable 4 years down the line, because it generally never happens. You generally don't see that fourth year. And in the meantime, the market is destroyed. And I think that it's very tough because you find yourselves in businesses that don't make as much sense as you thought they were going to, and then you're stuck and you've got to do whatever you can do to try and stay alive for as long as you can do it. And generally it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, and part of staying alive is being able to have investment. Are investors asking smarter questions today than they were 3 or 4 years ago?
There's not so many investors.
Yeah. A lot of them got burnt.
It's hard to raise capital in cannabis now. I think in Canada, Canopy and Aurora and Tilray and Hexo and, some of them are good at raising capital. They know how to go to capital markets, but except for them, I'm looking for investors, but I don't see that many people always, coming forward. But in general, the small investment isn't there. The public isn't buying cannabis stocks. All of the cannabis stocks in Canada are tanking. They all have limited, blips. But if you look at any cannabis stock over the last, 8 years since legalization, 9 years, there's no money. No one's investing. The people that are there some of them are staying there, but it's next to impossible to raise money in cannabis now.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in 2017, 2018, I get a lot of questions from people who wanted to invest. And the two things I used to tell them is, do your due diligence and know that it's a very long game.
Because cannabis was, illegal and no one really knew anything about it. Everybody thought that the minute cannabis goes legal, it's going to be like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And it was just this perception that it was going to be phenomenally successful. But as we saw, it barely lasted a year and it collapsed and it's never recovered.
Yeah. When you're having conversations with people around this, when you look at this, what metrics matter now?
In terms of what?
When you're talking to investors or people who you think, may want to dip their toe in the pond, like what are some of the most important things to set them up for success and actually have a fruitful conversation about it?
Cost of production and potential market pricing. It's really manufacturing 101. Everything has a cost, a real cost. And you have to be able to see your way through to profit relatively immediately. You can't project a company with years of losses and have some idea that, down the road, if we lose this much money, we'll start to make it. There has to be a clear path to revenue and a clear path to profit immediately or relatively immediately. Otherwise, it's just a story.
Yeah. I think there's also a broader question happening right now. What's the difference between a cannabis company and an actual business?
They should be the same.
Right?
They should be the same. A cannabis company should be in business to produce cannabis, to sell it to market at a cost where there is some margin in between the full cost of production and administration and sales and market price, and there should be somewheres there that at least there's a few cents in the positive. If it's not there, it'll never be there.
Yeah. I want to go into Europe versus North America a little bit. You're seeing operators from North America and Europe up close. What do you think each side misunderstands about one another?
I think in Europe, which has come from Canada, there's the idea that there's no cost to cannabis and there's no floor. So they can, any sale that I shouldn't say that so much anymore, but it's growing and I'm seeing it here at this show. There's this idea that there's always room for the cost to go lower. And there isn't. There is a floor. And in Canada, it was the opposite. Canada thought that Europe was the golden goose and it has been for a while, but it's becoming a bit more normal. And you have to understand in Canada that you're not going to retire in 2 years, and you're going to have to run a normal business at normal prices.
So as we start to close out, if somebody entered the industry today and asked for one piece of advice, what would you give?
Besides, don't do it.
Run!
Know what you're doing. Make sure that you're well financed. Know your business plan. Know your costs. How do you plan on producing, and who do you plan on selling to? And make sure that everything adds up and makes sense.
Yeah.
Don't get into it because you love it. So many people get into cannabis because they love cannabis. I hear it all the time. I love it. I'm in it. I want to be around it, but it's nonsense. It's just a business. Do it because it makes sense.
Yeah. And then I'll end on this. What does success in the cannabis industry actually look like to you now after everything you've seen?
Cannabis isn't good to me. I come from old school manufacturing, so it never dazzled me. It's a good business if you work hard at it. There are lots of challenges. There's lots of new supplies coming in, but make the best product that you can, and find good partners to trade with, and be dependable. And for us, it's been working out, and we see a nice future. We see a positive future for ourselves.
Thank you so much for joining me, Barry. I always love our conversations. For those of you listening, thanks for joining us today. This is going to be part 1 of a 2-part conversation on the Planted with Sarah Payan podcast. So if you want to check out the full episodes, please do. We're wherever you can find your favorite streaming podcasts. I'm Sarah Payan, and remember, conversation is normalization. Thanks for joining us today.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend, let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sarah Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sarah on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsarah.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.